What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Honor the Land. I am Max Loeb. Loeb's Leads here with Chef Zay on August 7th amidst the crazy Brandon Aiyuk trade scenarios, everything going on. We'll recap everything that happened with that. We'll talk about that. We will talk about training camp week 2, things we saw, things we liked, things we didn't like, as well as a little bit of a look ahead to preseason game 1 because it is 3 days away, which is just insane to think. Zay, how has the week been for you so far outside of busy? Because I know it is the craziest time of the year.
About as busy. I can't even I'm already excited, but I'm so excited just on the simple fact that we got our first ever event for the Crockpot on Wheels. So if you guys are downtown this Saturday, make sure you guys come through, say what's up. We'll be down there, and then we're doing a 24-hour stream. So whether you're there early, late, we'll be in the Muni lot as long as they let us stay in the Muni lot, and then we'll go from there. But I'm ready to watch some football, man. How you feeling?
I'm good. I'm really excited. I mean, I mentioned it before we got on. Like, Hard Knocks always gets me ready for football, even if it's not the Browns. So I've been very excited. But just seeing everything that's happened this past week, it's hard not to look ahead to the season and get excited for everything that's happening. I mean, last night basically was the nail in the coffin. Like, Brandon Aiyuk is going to be in the AFC North, assuming he gets traded. He's going to be in the AFC North. The Patriots are out. The Steelers are back in, and obviously the Browns have their framework agreed to already. It's so crazy to think because it's such a polar opposite of what could happen. You could have, assuming you enjoy the trade and like the trade as a Browns fan, you could think we are going to get this unbelievable talent and we're going to take him from a division rival, or the Steelers are going to get an unbelievable talent and you're going to have to face them twice a year.
But I think the play is though, because I'm hearing everything is going to be surrounded by probably George Pickens. Is that what you're hearing too?
I highly doubt that. Like, he's going to be traded.
That's what I thought, that it's gonna be Pickens,
No,
because if it's gonna be Cooper on our end, why wouldn't they go Pickens on their end?
because Pickens is on a rookie deal. And I think the reality is you draft a guy like that, you keep him in the building. They'll probably extend him in a year or two, depending on what the market looks like. There's no, like,
What's
the
the
Niners,
package?
it would probably be like, I don't think it's going to take as much as people think to get Brandon Aiyuk. There's a reason he's not practicing with the 49ers, and there's a reason they haven't agreed to the contract. Like, the Niners, at least for the monetary amount he wants, don't see him in their future. So, like, I don't think they really try to push super, super hard to get like a star in the trade, because I think there's worlds where Amari Cooper doesn't get traded from the Browns. I think it's more likely he does, but there's worlds where Amari Cooper stays on the Browns and that the Browns still get Aiyuk. I'd be like, I would be utterly shocked. I think it'd be the most shocking thing in the past 5 years if George Pickens was traded for Brandon Aiyuk. I cannot see that happening.
I just feel like they've made it clear that I think they want a receiver back in return. So I if that's the case, I mean, why are we talking Amari Cooper? Why is it not Elijah Moore? Or I mean, they were throwing the name around Jerry Judy. I don't see that being the case. I think we talked about it a little bit, but I
Yeah.
don't see that being it. But if it's gonna take Calvin Austin the third and a pick or something, I mean, sign me up, right?
I think the weird reality with the Niners is, like, if they were to get a guy like Elijah Moore, if they were to get a guy like Calvin Austin III, you'd be adding a little speedy slot guy on both ends, give or take. And you'd already have Debo, who's obviously, like, he's a big slot, but he's not really a true X outside wide receiver. He's more of a slot guy, and he can offer so many different things in the slot. And then you'd have Ricky Pearsall, who really is a true slot guy. The only true, like, outside X guy you'd have is Jawan Jennings, who they've extended, by the way. I want to make sure everybody knows that. Like, receiver room, Niners, Debo's under contract, I believe, for 2 more years maybe, but it's not a contract year for him. Jawan Jennings, they just extended, and then Ricky Pearsall's on his rookie deal for 4 years. Like, they have a future in their wide receiver room, like I said, that I don't think they see Brandon Aiyuk fitting into, at least for the monetary amount that he wants. But, like, I it makes so much sense they'd want a receiver back. Like, you want to fill the void, especially if you're losing a talent like Brandon Aiyuk, with at least somebody at that position. But maybe you look at Pittsburgh and say, we don't really like any of the receivers there, but we'd be okay taking a swing at the bat at a receiver in the first round next year. Why not give us a first? Like, that's where I think if they don't get the talent, that's where a first round pick could come in. But that's the only way I think a first round pick comes in. Like, I don't think if the Niners are going to get a star or like a really good player who's going to come in and contribute right away, I don't think they'll get a first round pick alongside that.
Are we at the point now where perhaps San Francisco has lost leverage a little bit? Because let's be honest, we know there's offers on the table, but it sounds as if they don't even want to be a part of Brandon Ayuk anymore. Everything
Yep.
from what it seems like. So if something like I don't know how much more wiggle room they or what they're trying to get because I don't think the offer is going to be any different from what it was. And if anything, it's going to be less knowing the fact that New England has just said, you know what, we're out. So
Yeah,
did they lose some leverage?
I think so. I think they did. I think they lost leverage from the moment they like not granted Ayuk to seek a trade because that really only officially happened 2-3 days ago, whenever that was. But I think they lost leverage when Brandon Ayuk, and this was not their own doing, but I think they lost leverage when all that stuff broke with Brandon Ayuk and the Commanders. Obviously, the connection with Jaden Daniels was a real thing, but you saw the videos of him on FaceTime with Jaden Daniels. You saw the videos of him supposedly watching Commanders film. Like they lost leverage, but not at a fault of their own. Like I think they've had a pretty strict plan in place that we don't really want to pay you X amount. And like rightfully so, because the Niners have been great at drafting receivers. They are okay just moving on. Maybe not okay. They understand that if that happens, they can't agree to the financial amount. You have to move on. It's best for the team. And they'll have cap space to improve other areas. Like we talked about yesterday. I'm skeptical of their second edge rusher. That's why I thought when the Patriots were calling, Matthew Judon would potentially be a thing and he'd get extended for a couple of years. I think they could use some outside secondary help. Why not shore up a part of that offensive line too? Maybe the right tackle position, maybe the left guard position. Like they could make a bigger splash there next year. But we talked about this yesterday too. As you think down the line for the Niners, you got to pay Brock Purdy pretty soon. So maybe they're trying to get off the books Aiyuk's contract now, plan for Purdy in the future because they can't afford to pay Aiyuk and Purdy unless you want to just sacrifice a huge other part of your team.
I seen something that talked about is the window closing because someone thinks that the window potentially already closed in San Francisco, and you're suggesting that this next year thing is in their sights. But I think you have to do something with this year. They have everybody basically back. I don't think the window's closed. That's foolish to say that. But I do think the window is a lot shorter because of these situations. Brandon Ayuk being one of them. He's your leading receiver. So I don't know if San Fran is so hell bent on looking towards the future. I think they're more so just like the Browns. We need to make something like if this move happens, we don't necessarily want it to be draft picks. We need return right now because Brock Purdy's on the rookie deal. The way that their team is orchestrated, it's only going to get tougher moving forward.
Yeah. And that's why I think everybody says Pittsburgh has all the leverage because, they have maybe a little bit more cap space down the line. They can afford to pay Brandon Aiyuk for the next few years. They obviously don't have that cap hit that a player like Deshaun Watson will give them. Everybody's saying that, and like Pittsburgh has the leverage. Pittsburgh has the better chance of trading for him. What are the Steelers going to give the 49ers right now that will go help them win a Super Bowl? Like I think George Pickens is out of the question. Like I don't think that's happening. I think the only thing, and the Steelers wouldn't do this. Alex Highsmith, that's not happening. Maybe a depth guy like Nate Herbig, who is good, who can step in right away. But like you're gonna have to probably package a couple picks if you trade Herbig. Like what are the Steelers going to give them in trade? There's no report, there's no news that the Steelers and Niners have agreed to framework. There's none of that. There's two parts of this trade: agreeing to the framework on the logistics of the trade and paying Aiyuk. The Steelers will shell out whatever money they need to for Aiyuk. I think that's pretty clear. But are the Niners going to feel more comfortable with what the Steelers are giving them, or are they going to wait out a little bit and make sure Aiyuk can agree to a deal with the Browns?
I just don't see how Pickens is just a no trade. Like for me, he has to be a tradable piece. But there was a guy that I saw. I don't know who said it or how strong of a feel it is, but Cam Hayward is potentially out next
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Rental guy, maybe that's a piece you could use with a pick potentially. Like that makes sense. You know, they love their defensive line guys, their front seven guys. And that would make all the world in the sense of San Francisco goes out and makes a splash with a name like that to bolster up and pair with Nick Bosa and Fred Warner and those guys. And how scary would that be, honestly? That would be pretty freaking scary.
That would be scary. That would be scary. And I think people also forget that. Well, two things. Number one, yes, that is a very real thing. I think the rental, quote unquote, is the way to go. That's why all these reports about Amari Cooper not being a part of the deal, like I find that so hard to believe because I think that's what would be the best for the Niners. But I don't know. Like, you think about the guys the Niners lost in the offseason, Cam Hayward would fit in really, really nicely after you lose some interior pieces that are quality interior pieces and Eric Armstead. But like with Pickens, it's the way I see Pickens is you are trading the San Francisco 49ers talent comparatively, Brandon Aiyuk, but 2 years younger on a lower contract, on that rookie contract. Like that would almost make zero sense for me if I was the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I don't think that's happening. I think Cam Hayward could happen. I think like I wouldn't be surprised if Herbig was the name that we saw in that trade if that does happen. But it's like it's a standoff. Like I think the Browns, well, we know the Browns have the trade agreed to, whatever that is. Can they get the contract agreed to? We assume the Steelers and Brandon Aiyuk have the contract agreed to, but can the Niners go to a place where like, yeah, we feel comfortable? I don't know. I really don't know.
How weird is it to sit here and be like, wow, there's a decision being made right now. And the decision is, do you want to go play for a team and get the bag or do you want to go win? Well, who's the winning option? The Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, it
Wait,
is wild.
what are we talking about here, bro? Like, this is so crazy to me that we're even having this conversation.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw a tweet yesterday when it was the consensus, at least it was Patriots or Browns, and it was like, oh, the Patriots are going to be able to offer more money, but the Browns are going to be able to offer a better chance to win. Like, when has that ever been the case?
Not as long as I've been alive. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, it's insane to see. One more thing I do want to say about this whole trade situation from the Browns end, Amari Cooper's contract, the way it's worked out, the Browns would still wind up eating a lot of the money.
I saw that
So
too.
the Niners it's like the Niners would wind up playing a little bit less than half, I believe, how it worked out, but they wouldn't be paying the full salary. So again, if you're San Francisco and you're seeing that, like, that's who we want. That's a cheap rental for a talented receiver. I think we're on the same page that Aiyuk is a better player, and I think just like you want to just go put one player or another against each other, you would pick Brandon Aiyuk, but there's not much that separates them. So if you're going to get a rental for a little bit less, then you get 1 year of Ricky Pearsall under the tutelage of these guys, so he can step in next year and have a more prominent role. I don't think you really change your Super Bowl chances if you replace Brandon Aiyuk with Amari Cooper in San Francisco. Like, to me, that still seems like the most beneficial option for the Niners. But is that the case with the Browns? I don't know.
I'm my last thoughts on it too is just like I do we really get better? You mentioned the 49ers. I think no question in my mind you get better with Amari Cooper off the simple fact of the window that we're talking this year, the team that they have. Mari Cooper can go to the Commanders and put up 1,300 yards. He can go anywhere and put up the numbers. So I think it makes sense. My biggest fit, it's just the fit with me here in Cleveland. I just don't know how it works with the locker room if you take a guy out with Amari Cooper and you put in Brandon Aiyuk, especially with all the noise. And I think we'll be sitting here now praising it, but the second you see the box score doesn't match what he wants, or you see that camera go over to the sideline and his helmet's being thrown on the sideline. Amari Cooper doesn't do any of that. That's
Yeah.
one thing you don't have to worry about. You throw that into the equation, you are now welcoming outside distractions, and I just don't think that team needs this.
Yeah, I agree with you. We will see what happens. Hopefully in the coming days we get some type of answer. As, we continue to move through the Brandon Aiyuk stuff, the reality is the Browns still do have a football game in 3 days preseason, but a little bit less than a month. So we got to talk about training camp. I was a little skeptical of what I saw, at least defensively, this past week. You don't have Greg Newsome and you don't have Dalvin Tomlinson, so that's normal.
Mhm.
But there were some good takeaways on both sides of the ball this week. I'm sure everybody saw the pick that Deshaun Watson threw to Devin Bush. Everybody take a deep breath. I'm not going to talk about it. I don't really want to talk about it. But Zay, what did you think? Who stood out to you these past few days at camp?
If you guys didn't see the podcast last week, make sure you guys go check it out because we did give who we wanted to look for and guys that could potentially stick out. And we asked the specific question, which was who's going to be that standout guy. Last year it was Andrew Watkins or Austin Watkins. This year, Jalen Darden, may I say?
Yep.
I mean, this guy is taking the top, not just off the second, third string defense. We're talking about on our number one defense. And everybody was so hell bent on, it was underthrown. Was it a touchdown? Was it
Exactly.
a catch? I'm just confused on was it a catch or not because he was burnt. The catch was made. End of discussion. Seeing him jump off the charts when you got guys like Elijah Moore, Jerry Jeudy, the Jamari Thrash, obviously Cedric Tillman. It's crazy to see him just come out of nowhere. But Cedric Tillman as well. Yesterday had a phenomenal day, back to back. I caught one from Winston and caught one from Watson on the deep ball. He seems to be finding a groove. The route that he ran against Rodney McLeod was a chef's kiss. It was so
Yeah.
beautiful. But those are my two big standouts right now.
Yeah, Darden was mine too. That's a position that, well, I got some negative things to say, and I cautioned everybody about it in the last episode as well. But that's a position where receiver depth is important, and you have Elijah Moore, who's a little bit older. Assuming Amari's here come week one, you have Amari, who's a little bit older. Jerry Judy's dealt with injuries in the past too. Like depth is pretty prominent at receiver for the Browns. But one thing, as great as it's been to see Darden playing really well, the day Elijah Moore got concussed, he was playing really, really well. I want to make sure everybody knows, like, this is a Browns defense without their starting nickel. These are backup nickels, probably players trying new positions and as much man coverage as the Browns play. Like, take everything with a grain of salt because I think the backup nickel position is a little bit weaker for the Browns, especially when it comes to man coverage. I think we're saying that. I think Jalen Darden's looking really good. He's fast. He can win. And I mean, the touchdown that Deshaun Watson threw to him, or no, there's still a long pass that Deshaun Watson threw to him. It was on Denzel Ward. So, like, that's a talented corner. But the reality is the majority of these reps that we're seeing, these guys are going up inside against second string nickels or other corners who are playing inside for the first time. Different technique, different things to look at. So awesome to see. Make sure everybody takes it with a grain of salt. We got to be patient with this stuff. But yeah, the receivers have been really good to see. It's kind of tough to get a gauge on the trenches, especially now. Like it's not always full speed. It's not always full contact. It's kind of tough to get a gauge on it. But I'm really fascinated to see, and we'll talk about this the preseason segment, what the offensive line looks like in week one, obviously, but as everybody gets healthier, because you saw the depth chart, I saw the depth chart. DeJuan Jones isn't starting at either tackle position, and that was a depth chart that's basically made saying, hey, everybody's healthy. This is how we look. And he was the sixth offensive lineman, which blows my mind.
Circling back real quick to you talked about our secondary and stuff like that. I think this attests to how much we need Greg Newsome. How everybody wanted to just write off Greg Newsome and be like, "Oh, well, let's just trade him as if he's a bag of chips."
Yeah.
You're not an elite secondary without him. People don't understand that. Denzel Ward can be a top 2, top 3 corner all he wants. Martin Emerson can be that up and coming star all he wants. But Greg Newsome is the final piece to make this defense, that secondary, as elite as it has been. So I definitely want people to make sure on that. The trenches, I think we got to give some praise to the young guy. He's getting not only praise from the fans because he's an Ohio State Buckeye, but you got Zadarius Smith talking about he's a young Aaron Donald. And they had a reporter on the radio yesterday who does a lot of film work, and apparently he says that Mike Hall has a first step like that's just out of this world. And he talked about how it's going to benefit this defense because he doesn't have to make reads. He just explodes, get off the ball, and by that time you got Myles Garrett and ZD on the other side, and it's just going to cause havoc. So I think Mike Hall is going to be a guy that we could potentially see in those third down blitzes situations, something where we need to put a lot of pressure on the quarterback fast. And I'm excited to see it, honestly.
I am too. I think that's a depth piece that could be really, really good. Two things I do want to say before we keep talking about that. You mentioned Zadarius Smith. Knee contusion seems like everything's going to be okay. Avoid a serious injury. Really good stuff. Don't need to stress too much about it. Obviously, he'll be out for a little bit. Would be surprised if he didn't play week one, knock on wood, but I don't think that's really a question. But that initial depth chart, again, like you look at a guy like Mike Hall, who is behind Quentin Jefferson. He is behind Mo Hurst. And obviously that D-line goes deep and injuries happen, so you're going to need to step up. If Dalvin Tomlinson isn't ready for week one, like one of those guys will have to move from second string to first string, and Mike Hall's probably the one who moves into the second string lineup. I am really fascinated to see, especially as we talk about the preseason game, what that rotation looks like, because one, I don't know how many starters, if we're going to see starters. I know we're not going to see Deshaun Watson, but I'm looking at Mike Hall and I'm looking at that depth, especially in the interior defensive line, to make it almost look like it doesn't matter who's out there. And I think that's what it looked like last year. It didn't matter who was out there. Obviously, having Myles Garrett out there virtually every snap really helps, but it didn't really matter who was out there for the Browns in the interior. Like, they were making plays, they were flying around. And if they weren't making plays on the football, like, they were getting into gaps to allow guys like JOK to make plays.
I would love to see, because the Packers have came out and say that their starters are playing. I think they're playing like 10 plays or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yep. Jordan Love is definitely playing. I know that.
Yeah. So why not let the guy go out there against the starters? Let us see what he can do versus a team who is projected to win their division this year. So I would love to see Mike Hall get a few snaps of versus a good look. Like we said, he doesn't have to do anything but just explode off the ball. Let's see what he does with Obo on that other side. Let's see what he does with Miles probably not playing, but you're gonna have some of those front seven guys that are probably going to be on that starting position. Let's see how he reacts with it. I wouldn't be surprised if Jim Schwartz lets him loose a little bit.
Yeah, it would be really nice to see. I mean, it's interesting that there's like this movement, not a movement, but there's more starters playing in week one in preseason this year than I've seen in a long time. Like, I don't know if the coaches are coming to this thing where, like, okay, like, we want to see what this looks like. We want to be able to improve it in practice. Like, that makes sense practically. But that, like, week two always kind of seemed to be the overlap of when the starters played. Personally, I don't think we're going to see Deshaun Watson at all. I don't think we're going to see Myles Garrett, but like, we're not going to see Deshaun Watson at all. But it is important to note, as just we think forward with all this stuff, joint practices are not as good as games, but they're pretty close in terms of meaningful reps. And seems like there's going to be a minimal limit on what Deshaun Watson does there. So we'll see what happens there. I think, just going back to that depth chart we were just talking about, offensively, looking at the receivers, it's fascinating because you have obviously Jalen Darden, the number two behind, well, it says behind Amari Cooper, but Jalen Darden, number two slot. You have David Bell, Cedric Tillman as the other number twos. Talked about it last episode, talked about it a bunch. Usually it takes 7 receivers, but you really, like, you look at some of the other players on this roster, you're like, where is the home for the 7th receiver? James Prochet is one of the ones that comes to my mind because he's a returner. But then, like, you go look at the punt returner depth, he is first. Jalen Darden is second. So if you feel Jalen Darden can step in there and be a really good punt returner, do you move on from Prochet? Do you leave Prochet and then have Jamari Thrash be the 7th guy? Because the reality is, if you keep Prochet at punt returner, you're assuming that's your 7th and final receiver. You're going to be pushing a 5th-round rookie with game-changing speed to your practice squad. Like, that's pretty wild, and I think that's a reality. And then that's not even talking about other guys like Michael Woods, and Matt Landers has been playing really well. Matt Landers is a physical specimen. If you guys have not seen him, he's a monster. And then another really interesting wrinkle here as we look at the special teams, like, all of the kick returners are running backs. The Browns are treating this like a run play. So you have Pierre Strong at the 1 for a kick returner, Jerome Ford at 2. Jerome Ford's making the roster. We don't really need to talk about that. But Nyheim Hines at 3. So when you look at the running back depth, in a perfect world, obviously it's Nick Chubb at 1, Jerome Ford at 2. But Pierre Strong is actually ahead of Deontay Foreman. We don't know what the issue is with Deontay Foreman. We don't know what that's going to look like, return timetable, everything like that. Maybe they put him on IR. But you're now at a spot where you could be debating a 53rd roster spot between Pierre Strong, Deontay Foreman, and whatever receiver you want, whether it's Thrash or Prochet. It's a tough thing. It's a really, really difficult thing to look at, especially this early on. That's why the preseason is so important. Like we get a better understanding of how players are doing and how everything's going. But it's really interesting to see.
Definitely going to be something to look out for as far as the punt return battle goes. Expect to probably see Darden get out there and see
Yeah.
what he can do, if he can handle the catching and all of that stuff. Because I think when it comes to punt returning, the big thing is who can protect the ball the most. You
Yep.
you have to make that split second decision of, do I want to take this or not? And if Jalen Darden can handle that duty, I mean, you brought Porsche in for that specific reason, and I also don't think that they were expecting Nick Chubb to be as healthy as quick. I think a lot of things favored them that they were just prepared for. And now I think you're in that fortunate situation where you have a little bit more than you can handle, and you're gonna have to cut some calories somewhere. And I know they paid what they guaranteed Deontay Foreman's contract, right? It was only like 2 or 3 million.
Yeah.
Could he possibly be a guy that they maybe move on from just
Yeah.
because of that reason that Nick Chubb is on the fast track way ahead of schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing that pushes that thought away from me is the fact that Nick Chubb will be your starting running back coming off a bad knee injury. We don't
Mhm.
know what the deal with Pierre. We don't know what the deal is with Pierre Strong in terms of how much he can take on a consistent basis. Like
They like
how?
Pierre though.
Oh, I do too. I absolutely. He's a very explosive player. How comfortable are you with only having Chubb and two backups? Like, are you comfortable doing that? Like, if somebody goes down in practice, like obviously they'll have guys in the practice squad, but somebody goes down in practice, how comfortable are you only having two backups that can step in and know the system right now? That makes me think they're going to bring four running backs onto the 53-man roster. It doesn't happen very often, but if it did, that could happen. And the fourth one could be Naeem Hines. Like that would be the overlap probably because he can return, he can do all these really good things in special teams. But then if that happens, is Prochet gone? Like, do you cut a receiver? Do you slim down there and then have Darden return punts? Like it's going to be a very interesting battle. Honestly, as crazy as it sounds, I think the special teams depth battle, especially as it relates to returner, is going to be the most important thing to watch during Browns preseason games.
Mhm. I think you asked if it would you be comfortable, and I think if you're Andrew Berry and you're Ken Dorsey and Stefanski, I think you would be comfortable. I think the running back depth position and the things that they do at the running back position, some of it I feel like is just to stroke the fans' ego because we love the running back position so much.
Yeah.
But we've known this for a long time that they want to pass the ball. Kevin Stefanski has been airing it out 30, 35 times a game with PJ Walker. It doesn't matter. And you saw all the moves that they've made, and they're switching the personnel and they're gonna be going more receiver sets. I think I think they can afford to be like, you know what? We need minimal things from the running back position. We have special talent at this position, and we're not asking you to go carry the load. We need you to just be able to handle certain aspects of this game. And I think you can pick that up. Let's just say, like you said it, carrying only two running backs, and God forbid an injury happens
Yeah.
somewhere down the line. I think you can go to the market and be like, we saw with Kareem Hunt. Obviously, he got in a little bit earlier in the season, but you can go and get somebody to be serviceable, and I don't think that's a big problem. So I definitely think they're comfortable in that aspect. It's just scary because we love our running backs.
Yeah, it's scary because you love Nick Chubb so much too. I think
Mhm.
it's weird. Like you obviously love Nick Chubb. Everybody's almost like in denial about the reality. I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of fans are in denial about the reality that Chubb comes back. And I hate to even put this out there. He's not the same. I also think fans are in denial about potentially trading Amari Cooper. Like the reality is, like everybody has their beloved players on the Browns. They're not going to be here forever, and sometimes the end may be coming sooner than we realize. I don't know what it'll look like. It could be a trade, it could be a tapering off in play. I just think everybody's got to be prepared for this team to look a little different this year, and it's probably going to be for the better.
And I actually have full expect. Like, there's no setback in my mind. We can't afford it. We just can't afford a setback, and everything for once, and I don't even know if it is because we don't know what everything going our way feels like. It feels like everything's going our way.
Yeah,
So regardless, even with the injuries, you still found ways to win games. So as long as they keep doing what they're doing, they remain patent and stay disciplined. They, I don't think there's nothing we cannot handle.
I agree. Any other final thoughts on camp before we start talking about preseason week 1?
I'm going Thursday. Mother Nature, please hold out. Like, what are we doing? I go to camp and literally he's like my uncle. He's the grounds crew supervisor. So I'm talking to him, and as I'm talking to him, he gets the call. Oh, rain's coming, lightning's coming. Oh, okay, I'll call coach right now. And literally gets off. We finish talking. He goes and calls Kevin Stefanski, and next thing you know, it's a monsoon, tornadoes, the whole nine. So please, Thursday, hold out.
Yeah.
Dang.
Gosh, everybody watching and listening, hope you guys stayed safe. Hope you by the time you're watching this, I hope you have power, but I hope you guys stayed safe. It was a wild like 4 or 5 hours yesterday. But yeah, the camp outside looked like an unbelievable atmosphere. Everybody was getting super hyped for it yesterday. Obviously, the weather came in, it didn't happen. That does suck. I'm sorry that happened. I can't even imagine.
I mean, I was already on my way. So someone had sent me a ticket and I didn't even look to see what was the day because I was thinking it was for today. So I checked the ticket and it says it's for Thursday and I'm already halfway there. So I'm like, oh
Oh.
my God, I got to turn back around. So I'm like, let me just shoot one more message out. And lucky enough, I got blessed. Someone came through for me and got me a ticket in. But unfortunately, it didn't even matter. So it was probably a sign to just turn around right then and there.
Yeah, you could have taken the side. But yes, Browns camp continues this coming Thursday. But this Saturday, the Cleveland Browns play the Green Bay Packers in the first Browns football game of this NFL season. It's preseason. Deshaun Watson's not playing. Myles Garrett's not playing. Probably most of the starters won't be playing much, if at all. But there are a lot of things we need to look at. Jameis Winston will be the starting quarterback. We kind of walked into the first preseason week expecting that he would be the second stringer. Obviously, we're going to be looking at Jameis Winston, but I want to start by talking about the Browns depth chart, which we talked very briefly about, but the third string quarterback, because there was no clear third string quarterback. It was DTR/Huntley. Like there's no decision there, and there shouldn't be a decision there for a while, but there's no decision there right now. I'm fascinated to see that battle. It is going to be a battle.
Is it gonna be a battle to see who goes to the practice squad or who's gonna be traded? Like, is this a showcase your ability type of thing? Like, I think the question mark is so big and it's so weird. We're talking about a third string quarterback, but like Tyler Huntley is he's a very valuable pawn on this chessboard because you can either capitalize from him or you can just use him for exactly what he is, and that's being a backup and an insurance policy when you need him.
Yep.
And I think I don't even know what to expect because we haven't seen anything from Tyler Huntley.
Yeah.
I think maybe when the clips started to first come out, but nothing from training camp. You haven't seen. I have barely even seen a picture of him.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they are already. He's got to be in some kind of talk. Like, what is it? Can you tell me what it is? Because I don't know.
I don't know either. I know we very briefly talked about the potential of like this being their out in the quarterback trade world with Aiyuk. Because as I'm sure anybody listening knows, like I've been on that train for a long time. Like I think they're going to wind up trading one of these guys before the season starts. It's so weird. We haven't seen anything. I was thinking the same thing. We've seen obviously a little bit of Jameis Winston. We've seen a lot of DTR, at least clips. But Huntley
And they're
is just
saying he's
like,
playing well too.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, like that's a guy who stepped in and played pretty well last year for a day 3 rookie who really didn't have much grounding under him. His first start was like baptism by fire. Found out 4 hours before kickoff he was
And beat an AFC North opponent in the Steelers, who not many quarterbacks can say they've done that.
That too, yeah. He was pretty good in the Steelers game. The Denver game was tough, but he didn't look bad when he was there. That game got out of hand fast for reasons not fully his own. But I don't know. Like I keep going back to this idea of what can you offer as like a third string or as like an emergency quarterback that other people can't. I think Jameis Winston has intangibles that make him uncuttable. Like you cannot cut Jameis Winston. He's a backup. He's a leader. He's going to be a mentor for Deshaun Watson. Does Tyler Huntley have that? I don't know. I mean, DTR is in his second year, so it's hard to say he does. But like both of these guys are cuttable or tradable, whatever it may be. I think it's not going to be super complicated. Which guy's going to play better? You're our third string quarterback. And I think there will be teams that want Tyler Huntley, regardless of, if they need a backup or need a third string. Oddly enough, I was really thinking about this with the Bears. The Bears' backup quarterback situation is kind of a nightmare. Like, that's a team who could use a backup or a third string guy. I mean, Caleb Williams will not lose the job, but like, God forbid he gets hurt. Are you really going to roll out and trust Tyson Bagent or Brett Rippon, like a guy like that?
I never even heard of those guys, so probably
Exactly.
not.
Exactly. Bagent is not bad. I will say that, but he's definitely not better than Tyler Huntley. Like it's, I don't know. There's teams out there that would want Huntley. I don't know. Like, I think the more I think about it, it's DTR's third string job to lose. I don't know. That's just how I see it.
I just don't see how you cut Huntley. That it's either he's
Yeah,
traded or he makes the team.
I
So
agree.
unless DTR comes out, and even if then he'll get an extra boost just off of the fact that the fans adore DTR, and that will seep into the organization somehow. He can come out and throw an interception, but if he throws for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns and makes a throw on a sideline that looks spectacular, that they'll run with that forever. But you don't cut. There's no way you're picking up or cutting Huntley because he'll get picked up the second you cut him, and then next thing you know, he's back in Baltimore or he's back somewhere where he's potentially hurting you.
Yeah.
So this is one of those situations where is this the first time we ever see 4 quarterbacks on a roster? Like, do they go that? I don't think you can. I don't think you do, obviously, but I mean, are they considering it?
Yeah, I don't know. There is that emergency quarterback thing that, like, I don't know. I'd have to look more into that for the 53-man dressing rule, but I don't know. I think it's DTR's third string job to lose right now. But like you said, they're not going to cut Huntley. Like, I think
Mm-mm.
it's got to be a trade or something. Like, I don't think they just flat out cut him. I think that would be silly. Although the contract he has is almost all incentive based, so it's not like they'd be losing a ton of money. We could talk about quarterbacks for a long time. Let's stay on the offensive side of the ball. Other players you're looking at offensively for this first preseason game.
Tillman, I'm still
Yep.
focused on Tillman. I think he already shown me flashes this past season, but he's now starting to put his foot down.
Yep.
And I don't think people understand that he is truly AFC North built. Type in Cedric Tillman blocks and go get ready to run through a wall, because if you don't remember, he put on one of the best blocks I've seen, reminding me of Hines Ward against the Steelers. And he is every bit of AFC North. So it feels like he's got something to prove. It sounds like he hears the speculation around this receiving room. And if I'm him, I feel like this is disrespectful. What do you mean? I'm not even in the equation of being one of the top 3 guys. It's Jerry Judy and Amari Cooper. I'm about to come. My eyes are on 19 all game.
I love it. I'm going to stick with the receiver room too. I think Jamari Thrash is this, like, not larger than life figure, but just this name that we both throw around. A lot of people throw around and we're like, okay, what can he do though?
Hmm.
Like, think about that last receiver spot and you got 5 or 6 guys pretty clearly defined in their role. And then you're like, okay, James Prochet, he can return kicks. There's our 7th guy. And then you're like, but what about Jamari Thrash? Why do we draft him? What value is he going to provide? He will play a lot, I think, this Saturday. So I'm really fascinated to see what he does, what the Browns scheme him up to do. Obviously, it won't be a full scheme as it normally will be, but like, where does he fit in the offense? Is he more inside? Are they doing different things with him? Is he the focal point of all the motions and everything like that? Fascinated to see that. But the thing I'm looking at closer is the O-line depth, because I think one, Zach Zinter, what happens with him if he plays, how much he plays, all that is going to be fascinating. Seems like he's been doing really well in practice. The health is an issue. Do they rush him back in the preseason? I don't know. But you have 2 older guards. You have 3 tackles who all got hurt last year. The majority are starting offensive line. Like, it's a reality if they could get injured. As bad as it is, I never want that to happen. It's a reality in football, but your offensive line, especially with those guys, that they could miss some time. Who is going to step in and who is going to be able to give you quality reps at positions that are extremely, extremely important. I think offensive line is obviously important, but overlooked, to be honest with you, above anything else. I'm fascinated by James Hudson.
I was just right. I literally just wrote his name down. You can't even see it, but I literally just wrote his name down.
Fascinated by James Hudson because full transparency, didn't love what I saw from him last year, but that's another name that, gets thrown around a lot. That's a name that
he's been here.
Yeah, been here, knows the scheme, has been playing with both the other tackles out too. But another guy is Jermaine Ifedi. Like, that's a name that's also been thrown around a lot because he's been in the NFL for a little bit. Like, that's a guy who has played on a couple teams. He's been around the block. He knows what he's doing. Can that older presence step in and be a stalwart on the other side of, let's say DeJuan Jones, it's right tackle, week 1. If Conklin and Wills are not ready to go, I don't know. I think the tackle depth is important, but the interior depth too. Really fascinated to see. I don't know what they're going to do as Inter, but that is who I'm looking at for sure.
I wish as fans we could fully understand how the trenches and stuff works, because we lost, quite frankly, we lost a master key this past offseason with Callahan being gone. And a lot of expectation, I feel like those are some big shoes to fill if you're Dickerson. And not only is it big shoes to fill, you're the studs of your foundation are also on the brink of not being here. We're gonna see what this guy can do and how these guys react. And is this offensive line going to continue to remain a staple from what it's been for the past? I mean, there's been two things that's been pretty consistent with the Browns. It's been that they've been bad, but their offensive line has usually been pretty dang good. And that now is in question. So it's definitely going to be interesting. It's definitely going to be excited to see the Michigan guy, because it seems as if he's gotten healthier quicker than expected as well, too. And he can be a huge role in this Aiyuk situation, just on the simple fact that Wyatt Teller's name was being thrown around that trade conversation. Although everyone that was in the conversation for being traded did practice yesterday. So take that how you want it. That usually does give you a little indication of some things. But it definitely is going to be fascinating knowing that you've got a new key to try to unlock on this offensive line.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see too. It's a good point. Zach Sinter has definitely healed faster than we thought. Like, it was a bad injury, and we didn't know what it was going to look like. And I've said it a couple times, I think he would have been an end of day 1, early day 2 pick if he was just fully healthy. Obviously, those interior guys don't go as quick in the drafts, but definitely looking at that. Defensively, anybody you have your eyes on outside of Devin Bush, because I know we probably both can talk about Devin Bush and if he's going to play, how much he's going to play. I mean, he's been stepping up because a lot of linebackers have missed time the past few days, but he's been stepping up. Obviously, he had the interception that we're not going to talk about. But what other defensive players are you looking at?
The defense is so hard because I think we know exactly what to expect from the defense. You can't just point to a guy and be like, "Yeah, I'm expecting something out of this." But you talked about the depth in our nickel situations and stuff like that. We've seen Cam Mitchell play, but he's had moments where he's played really well. You go back to that Chicago game where he made that huge stop in order for us to come back in that game. And he's able to step in again this year, knowing that Newsome, he may get that call again to start week 1. So it's going to be interesting to always see the secondary. When you see that clip of Cedric Tillman against Rodney McLeod, you really start to be like, okay, is our safety position is what we want it to be? Because if you're getting beat by Cedric Tillman like that, you can only imagine what other you know what I mean? So I'm definitely going to be peeled on the secondary situation to see how it goes, see how Martin Emerson and these guys react without their number 3 stud and Greg Newsome.
Yeah, I think DB is huge. Nickel position's huge. I mean, Ronnie Hickman is the guy I tend to look at a lot because I think he's got a lot of potential. But definitely looking at Ronnie Hickman. I mean, the D-line depth is honestly what I'm most intrigued by. Obviously, we talk about Mike Hall. Like, can he produce where if a guy like Dalvin Tomlinson or an older guy like Shelby Harris can't play 1 week, like, do you feel comfortable about him playing 20-plus snaps as a rookie? That's what I kind of want to see because I think that's kind of going to be the cadence he'll get this week. But I'm looking at the Isaiahs too, Isaiah McGuire and Isaiah Thomas, both on the outside, because
Thomas was injured last year, right?
Yep.
I like him.
Yeah. So you have those two guys who can potentially step in on the outside. And like Zadarius Smith is battling an injury. Obo is coming back from an injury. Like if that happens, it's kind of a broken record here. But like injuries happen. It was the theme of last season. How comfortable can you be with your depth? And I think as fans watching last year, like it was really clear to see the Browns were really deep. They didn't miss a beat too much, at least, when these super important players went down. Like that's a testament to Kevin Stefanski above anybody else, I think. But Andrew Berry and the depth that they've built, I want to like feel comfortable knowing the depth is good. It's like I'm kind of paranoid because of what happened last year. I want to feel comfortable with the depth in case last year happens again.
I think I think we are almost at that point where we should be giving these guys the benefit of the doubt. I think they've earned the right for us to be like, you know what? I believe you because Andrew Berry put together that roster last year. Kevin Stefanski managed it, and like you said, we did not miss a beat when nothing collapsed. Jim Schwartz
Yeah.
handled it like a champ. It was if it was second nature to him. Like I think we as fans could give this leash a little bit of slack and be like, I'll give this guy the benefit of the doubt until something goes otherwise because they have done nothing but meet or exceed the expectation every year. You can point to little things and be like, yeah, but they may not have addressed this or addressed this, but it's like you're talking about a second string, third string. Did he address the main problem? Yes, Andrew Berry has always gone into the offseason and check the box off for what is priority number one and priority number two, and then the rest falls into place. So I'm in the camp that I believe it, man. I Until I see it crumble, I'm believing it.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, looking at what the Browns have done in the preseason the past couple of years too, there's always a guy or two that stands out that you're like, wow, the fact that you can see a third or fourth stringer play consistently and be like, wow, there may be a spot on the active roster for this guy. It happens with a lot of teams, but not to the extent of the Browns, at least I think. It's a testament to Andrew Berry. Like this is Andrew Berry's Super Bowl, quote unquote. But like this matters a lot to Andrew Berry in the preseason, understanding depth. So I'll finish by asking you one depth player you think could make a huge difference, not just week one, but this preseason. Who is it?
It's got to be a depth guy, huh? I really want to go. I think Cedric Tillman is the future for us. So I'll go Cedric Tillman on the offense, but I'm intrigued by Mike Hall. I just think he's going to force his way into the equation. I know our front is so deep. Shelby, Mo, Obo, and those guys, like we're deep. But when you got a guy like Zadarius Smith who's been in this league for so long, throw a name like Aaron Donald into the equation, and then you ask people who scout for a living that this guy has an explosive step. Like everything that they're describing, it's like, oh, Jim Schwartz is probably like just dripping at the mouth to get this guy on the field to see what he can do on the other with these guys that are already explosive. So I'm intrigued by Mike Hall.
Mike Hall is a good one. There's a reason they were so comfortable taking him where they took him in the draft. Absolutely. That's a really good one. Defensively, for me, it's tough too, because like I will always want to say Ronnie Hickman just because of what I hope to get out of him. It's tough. Like you really got to feel comfortable with the depth in your secondary. And I think Ronnie Hickman is like he's beyond a depth guy. Like I think he's going to be a rotational guy, and that's just the reality of the Browns secondary. But I'm honestly looking at D'Anthony Bell. I think that's another guy who, if somebody gets hurt in the rotation for the Cleveland Browns, how comfortable can you be inserting him? And he looked great when he was inserted last year. I don't think there's an issue, but did he get better in the offseason? Can you consistently feel comfortable putting him in new situations? And I think in the preseason, like he's going to be one of the two deep guys. So he's going to be playing a good amount. Are the Browns and Jim Schwartz going to put him in different situations? I'm really fascinated to look at that. But the guy I have my eyes glued to is Pierre Strong, because that is a guy who's fighting for a roster spot. He's fighting for a roster spot as a returner. He's fighting for a roster spot as a running back. I think there's a world that exists where the Browns feel really comfortable with their running backs. Deontay Foreman is back, assuming everything is good. And he's the fourth back off the board. Generally speaking, you don't keep 4 running backs. I mean, practice squad, yes, but generally speaking, you don't keep 4. Maybe he doesn't return the football well. You'll feel comfortable putting Prochet or Jalen Darden back there. So I am so fascinated to see, and I didn't even mention Nyheim Hines. If Nyheim Hines is back, he does well because that's an explosive returner you want to have on your roster. How, if all those things go wrong for you as Pierre Strong, how can you respond? Like, how can you react to other things not going in your favor when you're fighting for a roster spot? I am really fascinated to see because he's going to get a lot of touches. He's going to return the ball. He's going to get carries. He'll provide some value in the pass game too. But I think Pierre Strong is fighting for a roster spot. I am really, really focused on him.
Yeah, I think the special teams is going to be a fun thing to just watch as a whole because number one, the kickoff return rule. I don't think many teams are going to be putting up much points on it, so it's not like we're going to be returning the ball, but maybe some field goals. So that could play a huge factor in field goal position or um, field. You know the word I'm trying to say.
Field
Field
position.
position battle.
Yeah.
But I think we're gonna be more so on that punt returner. Who's gonna be the guy that can separate themselves on this special team? And that's definitely something we need to be honed in on because special teams plays a huge part, as we all know.
Yeah. Huge part. I think just the special teams in general is going to be really, really plain and vanilla this preseason because like you don't want to show things schematically, offensively or
True.
defensively. I think
But you also got to know how it works, though, right? This is
yeah.
completely foreign territory when it comes
Yep.
to that kickoff rule, and you need to know if some of these guys can read it better. I feel like so.
Yeah.
We should at least see something. I think.
I hope.
I
I
hope.
just wonder. I wonder how deep it'll get schematically, but it's definitely what we're going to be looking at. And I think just as football fans, preseason is going to be frustrating because I don't think there's going to be a lot of returns broken. But when the season comes around and people start experimenting, I think that's when we'll see it. So I will tell you, it's just football fans, not even Browns fans, just football fans. Just be patient. I think the big returns will come, not in the coming weeks. Everybody's so excited for this thing. So like, I don't love where everybody's heads are at with this return thing because I really don't mind it. I think more returns are good. I think it looks weird, absolutely, but I think more returns are good.
I mean, last time we get preseason kick returns. Damon Sheehy Shajepi. I mean,
You
Jalen
never know.
Darn may take one back. Lock in. Let's just lock in.
Yeah, we need some highlights to keep us sane as we wait for the Brown season, the regular season to start in a little bit. Actually, no, a little bit over a month. I believe it's September 8th. So one month and 1 day from now, Cleveland Browns will be taking on the Dallas Cowboys. But for now, we wait till this Saturday. I believe it's at 4:25 Eastern, right?
425. Yep. For 445. One of those.
Hosting the Green Bay Packers, though. You will be in the Muni lot.
Yes,
I
sir.
may be there, but I will also be at the Fantasy Football Expo. So anybody listening who's local who will be in Canton, Ohio this weekend, don't hesitate to reach out. I will have a booth at the Fantasy Expo too. So plenty of stuff for you guys there. Some free stuff too. So if you want to stop by and grab some stuff, say what's up. I will be there. But we appreciate you guys watching. We appreciate you guys listening. If you're new, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube. Follow us on all of these other platforms, the audio platforms, if you're listening as well. Zay, any final words before we hop off?
Now, we know how we get. If we see an interception or if we see the defense get beat or we see Cedric Tillman go for 256 yards, relax, pump the brakes. It's just preseason. We can enjoy it,
Yeah.
but it's not the end all be all. Remember that. And as always, here we go, Brownies. Here we go.
All right. We appreciate you guys watching and listening. We'll see you next time.